Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte, episode 107. And I'm Paolo. I'll be your host for today, and welcome back. Like last week, I was not able to join you because I was traveling, which is also why I'm a bit tired. But it is what it is. We have the changelog to like from 2 weeks ago to go in, and today we will also have a showcase, which I'm actually quite excited about. So, I'm excited about every showcase, so it doesn't really count, but I'm excited. So let's dive right into it so that we can then switch to the interesting bit, which is the showcase. So let's start with Svelte 5.33.15, where we have invoked parent boundary of derived that throw. So if you have a boundary, like it's a brand new thing in Svelte that was released during Advent of Svelte, and you can wrap a component in a boundary, and if some error happens during rendering, it will be catched by code by the boundary. And it was not working for derives, and now it is. So if the derived is actually erroring out, it will also show the warning. The failed snippet. Visit expression when destructuring state declaration. This was just a regression that was introduced by the change to destructuring props. And so basically, in some situations, specifically, for example, when there was a store, I think in server-side rendering, actually, what happened is that like the store was just left as a variable, and it was not properly compiled by the compiler, and so it was giving an error, and now it is not anymore. This is just about typings. So XLMNS attribute was moved from SVG attribute to DOM attributes, because I suppose like that can also be a thing. Update Acorn parser ECMA version to parse import attributes. So this is actually pretty interesting. It was just creating, like this basically just added support for it from Acorn, which is our JavaScript parser. But this basically is what allow you to do, let me see if I can show you, to do something like this. Basically, when you import something, import something from my file.json, and you can say with, I think it's type JSON. I can't remember if this is the right syntax for it. And obviously, if I do my file.json, this is basically a new, cool stuff. So this is basically a new, let me see if it's actually correct. So if I do var dump and I do something, yeah, it's actually working. So like this should be actually native in the browser. Like I think if I remove this now, it's still working. So maybe it's not this thing, but yeah, basically like you can do something like this with, I can't remember if it's, so let me see, with import. Do I have with? Yeah, I think it's this. No, that's not it. Sorry, guys. I want to show you the right thing, but I also don't want to. Yeah, okay. I actually said it correctly. So basically, like, if you do something like this, which is something that was recently released, import attributes, here it is. You can basically specify the kind of data that thing, that module is. And if I'm not mistaken, this is about security, basically. because if you try to import something as JSON, there's technically like no, technically I could create an endpoint that says that it's JSON, but in reality it returns JavaScript. And before this feature, basically, before this feature, that JavaScript would have been executed. And now with this new feature that it's actually in JavaScript itself, you basically, like, even if I say that it's JSON, if the endpoint is actually returning something that is not JSON, I will get an error. So it should be for security. I don't know if it has any other advantages. Yeah, it's to load the non-JavaScript modules. Identified and parsed only according to their served MIME types. So even if you import application JSON, say, yeah, so that's what I was saying, basically, like it's for security. And there is with type JSON, with type CSS. You can also specify the resolution mode. So yeah, this is an interesting bit, and we had to basically bump Acorn to allow to parse it, and we also had to bump ESWrap, because then ESWrap is the package that Rich wrote to basically take a JavaScript object syntax, abstract syntax tree, and convert it back to string. And it was not ready to print with statements, and so we had to fix a bug and bump a dependency. This was also destructuring state in SSR, so it was kind of the same fix as this, still a leftover. Fix reset is flashing if flash sync is called and there is no scheduled effect. So this was basically just a small bug that was left, because basically flash sync is a function that you can call by importing from Svelte, and what it does is that basically if you call flash sync by the next line, every scheduled effect will be executed. So every DOM update will actually be updated. So it's pretty rare that you need to use something like this, but that might be a situation where you need it. And the problem was that if you called flash sync and no effect were scheduled, this is flashing flag that we have inside Svelte to do stuff differently was never reset to false. And so basically the next time it was also creating problem to the reactivity system. We have a new feat, which is one of the favorite things, like Computer Guy, which is a new maintainer. He recently joined the maintainer team. Added these. So inspect.trace is a very cool thing that you can do. So if you have count, for example, and you have $state 0, and let's say that you have an effect, and this effect is dependent on count, and then you have a button on click, count ++, and do count like this. So you have an effect that is dependent on count. If you do $inspect.trace my effect, this will basically tell you every dependency of this effect. Now, if you did this in version 5.33 point something, so let's actually switch to 5.33. So this was before that feature was released. Okay, if you see the console, you basically can see that this is the my effect, and this is the state, the variable that was this variable actually changed. It was dirty when this effect ran, and so if I click again, I can see that it was 1, and now it is 2. And you can see where it was created, where it was updated, and where it was traced. So you get all this information about this variable, and this can basically help you determine if you have any reactivity problem. So for example, let's say that you have let show is equal $sign state true, for example, and you have something like input type is equal to checked, bind checked is equal to show. What do you want? Oh, it's checkbox. And let's say that you only read count. So if show, you only read count if you show. So in this case, as you can see, like you can see that you have state true and state 0. And if I switch back, you can see that I only have state false now as a dependency. So why is my effect not running? Now you can figure it out, because the only dependency of this effect is actually show, which is false. And so when I click back, now I get bot dependency, and if I have bot dependency, it will log every time. Now, this is all cool, but you can see that, like here in this case, you don't actually know the name of the variable. Like you just know that some state variable changed, and the value is 13. So most of the time, this is probably okay to figure out what variable actually changed and why you're not seeing something, but sometimes it can be pretty annoying. And so if we switch to our latest release, actually, and we leave, now the output is much better, because now you actually get the name of the variable that it's actually being shown. So you can see that now you have show, which is true, and count, which is 0. And if I increase, count is equal to 1. And if I switch back, now show is false. And now this is, it's the same deal, but we also have this, which is tagged, and it's a very good addition. And it makes debugging effect much easier to do. So yeah, not that you should use effect, remember. Regardless, add command and command for to HTML button attributes. So this is just a matter of adding types for that. Better inspect trace output. I think this was just something to unlock this. Properly hydrate dynamic CSS props component and remove element removal. So this was something that basically like the dynamic, if you create a component, you can do something like this. So let's say that I have a component, div, for example, hey, and I do style, I do div, and I say that color is equal to var color, like this. So if you do something like this, you can then use this component and do import component from component. And if I use this component, obviously initially it will be white because there's no variable, but I can actually do this, color red, and it will actually work. Because what is happening is that under the hood, Svelte is wrapping this component with like a component that is not actually there. It's this Svelte CSS wrapper. It has style display of contents, and this means that like that component is basically just there for like something, like it's not actually shown, is not part of the DOM basically, and then it's adding the variables that you have, like this color red, inside that CSS, so that everything inside that Svelte CSS component will have access to this color, which is cool and nice. However, the problem was that it was a relic of an old code probably that was changed. And so this meant that basically whenever you did something like this with server-side rendering, it was throwing a warning about an hydration problem. It was recovering, so it was not disruptive, but obviously you will still get a warning every time, and it was annoying. And also it was removing the element on like when some variable changed, and so it was actually not working at all if if this was dynamic. And so this is what that PR fixed. Correctly tagged private class state field. So this is still circling back to this inspect trace stuff, because like private class fields were not tagged correctly, and so it was not showing the right thing. Add missing typing for some dimension binding, so there's still a bunch of typings. Prune TypeScript class field declarations. So this is another thing that basically, like in TypeScript, you can do something like this. So long is equal ts, and you can do something like class is equal declare stuff, which is a string, for example. And if you did something like this is not actually code that is there. So it's not really like it shouldn't be there in JavaScript, basically, because it's just a type stuff, and we were not clearing this up. And so if you tried to write something like this, the declare actually ended up in the JavaScript, and since there's no such thing as the declare keyword in JavaScript, it was erroring out. So it was fixed. Don't eagerly execute derives on resume. So this was something about when you resume, when there is some animation, basically we stop every effect because the animation needs to run, and when the animation finishes, we resume the effect. And so when we resume the effect, we were also eagerly executing derived, which meant that in some cases, if you were running an animation and the variable, some like variable changed, the if value was like, despite being guarded by an if, it was still like accessing a variable that was not there anymore. Prevent memory leaking signals in legacy mode. So this was a small memory leak, to be fair, because basically if you created an each loop in legacy mode, we were adding the item of the each loop as like we were storing that item in an array, because if you modified that variable, it would need to call before update, which is a thing in legacy mode. But technically, like since you can't reassign to an item in each loop, there was no reason to store them in legacy mode, and so we basically stopped doing that. And that's also true for await, and that's also true for another block that is creating a signal, basically. Don't define error.message if it's not configurable. So this happens when you have some errors. So when you throw some error and you have a Svelte boundary around, basically what happens is that to give you a better error message in dev mode, I think we only do that in dev mode, yeah. To give you a better error message in dev mode, we try to replace replace the original message by appending our own stack trace, which is more in line with your the Svelte component structure, basically. However, this was a problem in some cases when the error that was thrown already had their message defined and it was not configurable. So when you define a property on an object, you can say that that property is not configurable, which means that after you added that property, no one else can touch that property. And so it was actually erroring out, but with a different error. So as well, we were basically swallowing the original error. And this actually came up because Zod is doing this. So when Zod throws the error, it's defining a new message for it that it's using the define of the error that you define in your schema And so when Svelte tried to like override this, it was getting swallowed and a new error was thrown. And so now if we check that is not configurable, we just skip setting the message. Don't set state within with parent in proxy. So there was some recent change to our proxy logic, and in our proxy logic, we run something in the context of the parent. This can happen, for example, for derives and for basically if you are accessing a proxy, we are reading the original value in the context of the parent effect, so that if you are inside a derived and you are reading, in reality you are reading from in the context of the effect that is the parent of that proxy. It's a bit convoluted, but the problem is if you try to write inside this with parent function, what can happen is that if you are inside, if the parent is a derived, so if you create state inside a derived, you are trying to write inside a derived, which is not allowed. And so this was basically throwing an error that was not actually needed. Use compiler-driven reactivity in legacy mode template expression. So this was a bug. Basically, like, unfortunately, you can't use runes reactivity in legacy mode. So let's say that I have this file here, for example. Let's say that I have, I don't know, stuff.svelte.js. And I have what is happening? What? Let count is equal to $state, for example, which is 0. And let's say that we do something like export function get, and we return count. Turn count. And then let's say that, let's say that we do set interval, and we do count plus plus every second. Now, if we import get from stuff.svelte, and if I am in rune mode, if I try to do this get, do svelte options runes, this, yeah, you can see that now. Let me refresh for good measure, but you can see that like this is actually working because it's using the reactivity system and like it's listening to this effect. However, in legacy mode, this should not work. And in fact, now it doesn't. But before that changes, basically in legacy mode, everything works just like legacy, because otherwise it will break legacy application. And in legacy mode, if you just call a function, this function will only be invalidated if this get function changes, not if something inside it changes. So this was a bug that was actually there for a long time and we actually never realized, but now it's fixed. So legacy mode actually properly works if you use, like even if you use something like runes inside this function, basically. Yeah, so this is basically what is going on here. Keep spread non-delegated event handlers up to date. So if you spread some event listener, and there are some event listeners that are not delegated, so most of the event listener are actually delegated, which means that we only register one single event listener and the body, and not a bunch of event listener on all the elements. So we only register one, and however, there are some event listeners that cannot be delegated. For example, I think on wheel, like when you scroll, cannot be delegated because otherwise it will not work. And so when you were spreading those, it was not kept up to date, and now it is. Remove undefined attributes on iteration. So if you have some undefined attribute during iteration, it was not removing those attributes if they were there in server-side rendering, and instead it should have been, and so now it's fixed. Sorry. Ensure sources within nested effects still register correctly. I actually didn't see this PR and this issue at all. So I suppose basically, like, technically you can do nested effect. So you can have an effect inside an effect, and probably it was not registering the dependency correctly in that case, and now it is. This is actually a regression that I've introduced about the CSS props dynamic component. So if you were rendering a dynamic CSS prop component, a dynamic component within a dynamic component. So let's say that you have a variable that is storing the component to render, and if you were rendering that component within the same component, so as a children of the same component, it was basically shadowing a variable name with the same name. So while it was trying to read the original name, instead it was reading the component name, and that was throwing an error. Match class and style directive again against attribute selector. So this was basically, it was kind of an edge case, but basically if you, let me do this, if you had something like this, let me refresh for good measure. Let's say that you had, I don't know, div class stuff is equal to true. So this means that if you do something like this, cool. If you did something like this, stuff, color red, it was working. What was not working was this. So technically, you can do something like this. So this means, like, select every element that has a class attribute, and this has a class attribute because this class will be added to the attribute. And so it was incorrectly flagged as unused, and now it is not. And the same is true for style. So if you did something like style, this was incorrectly flagged as unused, and now it is not. However, this introduced a regression because it was just matching the first class, and so it was breaking some code. But yep, that's it for Svelte. Let's see if we have any new release for SvelteKit, and we do. There's a bunch of stuff. So let's see. Correctly invalidate static analysis cache of child nodes when modifying a universal plus layered file during dev. So this was basically, we introduced recently the fact that if you export const SSR false, if it's statically analyzable, it means that we don't actually import the module, we just read your code and see that you don't want that code to run during server-side rendering, and this basically allows you, if you set SSR to false, to just directly access window, for example, within the load function. However, since, like, we don't want to do that over and over again, we have a cache of it, and if you have a cache of it, we were not invalidating it when you changed the layout file, and this meant that if the layout was SSR false, like, it was still trying to, like, import the children, which was wrong, so it was fixed. Correctly set sequential focus navigation starting point after navigation. So I suppose if you were navigating, it was not resetting the focus. So when you tabbed, it was starting from the wrong argument. Suppress console spam for Chrome DevTools request. So this is something that is a bit annoying, but if you use actually any framework with Chrome and you try to open the DevTools in localhost, Chrome is actually requesting a file from your server in localhost, and they're doing it to enable like the workspace feature of the Chrome DevTools, which basically allow you to modify your code directly from Chrome, which is interesting, but it's a bit annoying the fact that they are doing this request. Because there was a lot of console spam basically, and so we basically suppressed the warning that log and actually printed a nicer message that explained how you can fix this issue if you want. Avoid externalizing packages that depend on SvelteKit so that libraries can also use redirect and error helpers. So basically this was a problem because if a library that it's using redirect or error inside their helpers, since svelte.js.kit was externalized, it meant that inside redirect and error, we are checking if like this thing is an instance of redirect and this thing is an instance of error that come from svelte.js.kit. But if you are bundling that separately, it means that there are two different classes, which means that instance of fails. And so now it was fixed. Correctly run deserialize on the server. So this is to basically do the deserialization of the transport method. Handle non-semver style dependency version. So technically, like nobody says that you need to use semver to have to have a dependency version. So you could use something like latest or something different from a number, and or even something like GitHub : / and stuff like that. And so now this is also handled by SvelteKit. Like if we find this kind of dependency, it's fine. Correctly inline style sheet of component dynamically imported in universal load function if they are below the configured inline style threshold. So in SvelteKit, if you set inline style threshold, everything below that threshold will actually be inlined in your HTML, which is much faster, but it was having a problem, basically. Correctly access transport decoders on the client when building for a single or inline output app. So if you are building single or inline, which is basically a way to build your SvelteKit application into one single app, one single file, which is super cool, by the way. Probably like the transport was not accessed correctly, and now it is. Correctly set the sequential focus navigation point when using hash routing. So this is the same as before, but now for hash routing. And regression where resetting focus and the URL hash contains selector combinators and separators. Add support for Vite 7 and roll down. So this is pretty nice. Vite 7 is actually shipping with roll down now, which is a brand new library written in Rust to bundle your application. This will basically make your dev environment and prod environment much closer because they are not using ESBuild for dev and rollup for production anymore. However, use it with caution because, well, first you will need Vite plugin version 6 at next and Vite 7 beta, so like it's in beta version basically. But, and there's actually a hint here, there will be larger bundle size because basically roll down to this moment is not implementing every single tree shake, and rollup is very good at tree shaking, and so basically like as of today, if you build with roll down, you will likely get a bigger bundle size, but it's faster to build. So it's a trade-off. You can check out and you can see. Up to you. Let's see if we have any other thing that has been released. Obviously, Vite plugin Svelte released like the next version. This is basically the new measure of Vite plugin Svelte that is dropping support for Node 18. You can use the TypeScript preprocessor, but now it requires verbatim module syntax. It's bumping the Vite peer dependency, and it's defining a filter using object hook syntax, which should make slightly faster. Like basically with this, instead of like getting every file, checked the name of the file, like it's basically much faster to ignore files that are not basically like before the transform hook would get invoked for any file, and Vite plugin Svelte was like manually saying, okay, if everything is fine, don't, like if it's not a Svelte file, don't do anything. With this, it will be invoked way less, so it's good. Add experimental support for roll down Vite, replace ESBuild optimizer with roll down optimizer, and update some dependency. So this is nice. And I guess this is also the new release of Vite plugin Svelte Inspector. Yeah, it's basically the same. We also have ESLint plugin Svelte, no top-level browser globals, false positive for if browser, fix false positive for regular components in valid compile custom element props identifier. We also have some new release for the extension, workspace symbol support, invalidate project file cache, so to handle watcher race conditions. So basically, every language server keeps track of every file in the project, and it's invalidating some files because of a race condition. Prevent error with bind, these, get, and set. So it was erroring out for some situation, and now it's not. Don't treat derived import from Svelte store as a potential store, because obviously it will not be a store. Key block can have its own block scope. So yeah, and I suppose that's basically the same thing. Yeah, that's the same monorepo. We also have two new releases for SVE. One that adds support for DevTools JSON, which is basically the thing that I was talking about before for the logs. So if you want, you can add DevTools JSON, and this will add for you this Vite plugin that serves the file that Chrome needs to use the workspace. It's also updating the Lucia template because the creator of Lucia actually updated it. Mount not available. Yeah, support Vite browser mode. So basically now you can also choose for browser mode, which is cool. By the way, it's a very cool thing from Vitest. SvelteCheck is probably the same thing. Yeah, it's the same. And Svelte TSX, same thing. And TypeScript plugin, same thing. So yeah, that was it. Let's see if we have something interesting in the tracker. So, oh, this is interesting. So support using and link top level using declaration in component to lifecycle. So using is a brand new keyword that you can use in your JavaScript code. And it's all available in Chrome, I think. And basically, sorry, basically, when you do using, it will allow for a variable to automatically define how you want to dispose of it. So if you are opening a connection to the DB, for example, you can close that connection when it gets out of scope. And so if you declare a variable with using instead of const or var or let, as soon as you get out of the scope where you declared it, this symbol.dispose will be invoked, and so you don't need to manually clear it up, basically. This is actually a fix add print function. So this is pretty interesting. We're working on making ESWrap pluggable, so with a plugin. And this means that we can technically use ESWrap to print a Svelte AST. So this is not something that there is a Svelte AST package on NPM, which is maintained by Xiho, which is one of the guys behind Storybook. And it's very good already. But with this, basically, Svelte will provide the print function itself, so that if you are building a Vite plugin that needs to change your Svelte plugin, your Svelte code, you can compile your Svelte code, do changes to the abstract syntax tree, and then print it back to Svelte code, which is pretty cool. And we already looked about this. So now it's actually time. Oh, there is actually a discussion which is very interesting, and I want to talk you about, and I want you to check out, which is not here. So Antoine, if you're watching this, I don't think you are picking the discussion from SvelteKit, because that should be a discussion from SvelteKit. So Svelte.js kit, we recently released the discussion for remote functions. So this is basically a new way in which you can load data, and this pairs very well with the async branch. Basically, you can have a .remote.js file, and if you import it, basically, if you use it on the server, it's just a function call, but if you use it on the client, it will be a wrapper around fetch. So basically, you can do something like this. Let me see if there is some example. Yeah, you can define a query, and inside that query, you can just access your DB, for example, and return the row, and then you can literally just do this: await get likes item.id. And so when the await branch will be merged, you can literally just do this, and it will work. So instead of loading data through the load functions, you can just create a remote function, load all of your data, and then use it inside this component. We're checking up stuff, so please take a look at this GitHub discussion. I will actually link it inside here. Take a look and give us your feedback, because I'm pretty excited. This is literally game-changing for SvelteKit, so pretty excited. Now, let's actually switch to something much more interesting than me blabbering, and I will switch to our guest. So here it is, and here's Umar, right? Did I say it right?
Omar.
Sorry,
very close.
I still got you muted. It's Umar, right?
Yeah, very close. It's Umar.
Umar, okay, sorry.
No,
I tried and I failed, sorry. But yeah, Umar here is, as you may see from his already shared screen, is the creator of Svelte Lexical, which is a pretty cool library to write rich text content. And I'll actually now leave the stage so that he is going to present it. As usual, if you have any question, drop them in chat and we can have a Q&A after. So please, Umar, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Paulo. Yeah. So Svelte Lexical is a rich text editor for Svelte. And this is the documentation site for Svelte Lexical. It's actually based on Lexical from Facebook. And Lexical is for React. The core of Lexical is developed in JavaScript, but all the plugins and the UI elements, they are mostly in React. So this is Svelte Lexical closely follows Lexical, but obviously the components the editor itself and all the UI and the functionality and the reactivity, it's all Svelte based so that it can be used in the Svelte project. So let me jump into a demo right away. So here it is. You can access this playground from here as well, from the main website. And let's play around. Let's write some text. So this is some text. So it does usual stuff which you can do in a text editor, like I can select this and maybe I can change the font and increase the font size. Also, let's set the background to yellow for this. And similarly, this one, let's set the text color for this one to red. So yeah, usual stuff that you can, sorry, again, did the background color. So let's undo that and go for the text color, make it red. Yeah. So obviously it has undo, redo, and all the typical functionalities you find in a rich text editor. And you can obviously do headings. Yeah, and some more text. You can do bold, italic, underline, inline. You can also do inline code blocks. Okay, yeah. And yeah, there is also, we can create links. And there is also a functionality to auto detect links. So if I write, let's say, a URL here, it will automatically convert it into a link. So, or you can select some text and then click this and it will pop up a dialog to set it to a hyperlink. I strike through subscript, superscript, you can clear formatting. So yeah, you got the idea. There's a bit more interesting stuff. There's a checklist, for example. And regular lists, code, all this stuff. So let me show you code blocks. So here, if I let me write some code. So I can change the language. So this is, you can see there is syntax highlighting based on JavaScript right now. And I can get a bit more space here. And it shows the language here. I can copy the code and I can also format it. So on purpose, I kept that on 2 lines. So if I click this, it fixes the formatting. So prettier is also available. To keep the bundle size smaller, the prettier plugin is loaded dynamically based on the language and all of that. Yeah, so these are code blocks. Then we also have a horizontal rule and image support. So let me insert a sample image. We can resize it, also add a caption to it. Yeah. Yeah, here insert, we have some a bit more advanced stuff like layout columns. We can split it into 2 columns, 4 columns. Let's do it 2 columns, 25, 75%. So now it has these 2 columns here. So let's insert an image in the first one and now in the second one, just to make it clear that we have these two sections here. The screen is split and with this ratio that we picked. Yeah. We can also include a video here. So let's pick a video. Maybe search for something related to Svelte. Let's pick this one. All right. So it shows up here. We can play it from here as well. So it's just embedding a video inside of the document. And all what I'm doing here, there is a object model behind it. So if we want to export it or re-input it afterwards, we can do it in a JSON format. HTTP is also supported. We can also insert tweets from X, and we can also do Blue Sky posts. Yeah. I think only thing left here are the tables. So let me add a table here. So yeah, in the table, it has a lot of features, like very easy to add columns and rows. Also, we are able to resize columns and rows. We can add an image here. Let's make it a bit bigger. Now, also in we have this menu for each cell or whatever we have selected. We can set background color. Yeah, we can also merge cells. So yeah, so we can insert from here as well if we don't want to insert it at the bottom, rather we want to do it in the middle. So maybe here, let's do one above. So we have a row here. So it's quite feature-rich, typical table manipulation. Mostly all the features you typically see in text editors are there. We can also freeze the top row or the first column. We can remove the header. You can see right now there's a header row and the column is kind of column header. We can remove that, yeah, or add it, yeah. Yeah, so it has all these features for tables. Last drop down is related to alignment. So you can, for instance, take this and we can indent it and also align the whole thing to left, center, whatever we want. Yeah, so these are most of the features, but it has a lot of other interesting stuff as well. So one of the things is this dev tools. So all this what is here, I can see it here. It's all that object model is shown here. So it's very good for debugging. And if you're creating an extension, a new node type or something, you can see here what's going on. And it also shows what's selected. So if I, let's say, select the first word here in the document, and when I come to the DevTools, it shows me that this is what is selected and points to that here as well. Yeah, and let me show you something which I need to zoom out for. That's a bit too much. So there's also time travel, so I can so now nothing is there in the editor, and if I click play, it recreates everything what we had. So now we are back to where we were, and I can slide it to get to some point. Let's exit this and let me make it bigger. let's get rid of all of that. Okay, so yeah, that's something interesting that the dev tools, and that can help a lot with development, and also if someone is interested in adding a plugin. It also has markdown support. So I was doing headings and all from here and lists. Well, I can do this as well. So hash and space, it's heading 1. Now I'm back to normal. Now it's heading 2. Similarly, I can do this to create list, and I can press tab to create a sub item, keep going like that. Another tab, another sub item, and backspace if I want to go one level back. So Markdown is supported for images and for hyperlinks, for headings, and other formatting. Like I can do font bold like this, and I think italic works like this. That's also bold. Maybe I think it's single asterisk for italic. Yeah, so there's markdown support as well. I've already shown you, I guess, most of the stuff here. Yeah, another interesting thing is the support for collaboration. Let's turn it on. And to demonstrate it, I would like to split the screen. So now I have 2 screens, and I'm in collaboration mode. So it's like 2 different people working on the same instance of an editor. Let me put this one in dark mode and this one in light mode. And here, let's start typing. I am a frog. So you can see in the other window, it's showing that frog is writing this. And if I come here and I write something, I am an owl. Yeah, so you see that it appears on the other side, and you see on your side that the other person is typing, the cursor shows up. So there is this collaboration that is supported. The dark mode is supported. You can also switch to system, light or dark. Okay, one last thing I want to show as part of the demo is the composability of this. So if I go to the docs and show you the list of plugins, so everything in Svelte Lexical is a plugin. So at the very, if you create a very minimum editor, it will have nothing, just regular text, no rich text features and nothing. And then you can keep on adding plugins and it will give you more features. So here's the list of all the different plugins that we have. Yeah, so YouTube for adding YouTube videos inside of the document, image support, image caption support, collaboration support. There is a plugin for markdown shortcuts. Yeah. And I also want to show you, I have a page, where what I have done is I have gradually built the editor, adding more features to it. So here is the first one, which is just a plain text editor. So you can write text, and there is no formatting, nothing. You can do history here, but it's just a text editor. Now this one here adds rich text support. So there is font size and regular formatting features and a rich text editor. Now we go further up, and this one adds support for lists, checklist, quote, and horizontal rule, images. Then we go to the next level, and it just keeps on adding other stuff. So this one adds code blocks. So, and then you can look at the code of each of these ones, and you can see how I'm gradually building more complex editors. And if I show you an example here, maybe this one. So in the editor, yeah, this is the code for the editor. And this is a composer. Inside the composer, you can have a toolbar. And this is the editable content you have to place inside of it. And then you have the list of plugins. And this one has rich text. And if you add here markdown shortcuts, your editor will start supporting that. So it's very composable. Out of this big list of plugins, you can choose what you want when you're using this library. So you want to keep it simple, or there is specific functionality that you are after, or something you don't like in your editor, or you don't want. Maybe you don't want links, or you don't want auto link. So autofocus, if like in my case in the playground, this is the only thing on this playground. So whenever it's launched, I want the editor to be focused. But if there are a lot more fields on the screen, maybe it's a CRUD application, data manipulation application, and you have a lot of fields and you don't want to by default focus on the editor, then you don't need to include this. So you can pick what you want based on the functionality you want to have. A lot of functionality and a lot of composability, and easy to get what you want. Yeah. So yeah, that's all I want to showcase. Back to you, Paulo.
Yeah, I'm coming. Sorry, it always takes me a while to switch back my camera when I'm here. So yeah, I mean, this was pretty impressive in my opinion. Like, it's very feature rich, and I don't know like how much you need to re-implement from Lexical, because I suppose that like the core of the job is done by Lexical, but I still think like you will probably still need to like wire everything up, right?
Yeah, so it actually is a lot of work. So if you come here to Svelte Lexical, it's 978 commits. So it's a lot
Yeah.
because, yeah, and I don't know how far back it goes, maybe 2 years or something. Or yeah, so that's how long I've been doing this.
Yeah.
And a lot of commits, a lot of work. The reason is that lexical, apart from the core, all the like image component, all these plugins,
Yeah.
they are all React based. So like about, I think now the count that I support in Svelte Lexical is around 30, and almost all of them are written in React.
Okay.
So converting from React to Svelte is not always very straightforward.
Yeah,
It
I
takes
can see it. I
a
can see
lot
it.
of effort. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is very impressive work. Congrats, and it's pretty cool. One question that I have is, I actually had a question while you were explaining it. I was thinking to myself, I wonder if it supports Markdown, and then you say, yeah, it supports Markdown, and so it's pretty cool. But another question that I had is, how easy would it be to customize the look of it? Like, let's say that I want to use this in my application, but I also want to like support my own design system. Like, could I
Yeah.
do it or?
Yeah, so I have thought about that. And when you get started, basically what you have to do is to create the toolbar, which is the main thing in the UI, and the editor. So yeah. So if you look here, this is all exposed. So you can include in the toolbar what you want to include, but also you can write your own bold button. So maybe you don't want to include this one, you want your own styling, your own CSV icon, you can do that. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is that uh, there are themes. So somewhere here I would be importing the theme. Yeah, so this is the theme which is imported. So in this one, I'm importing the default theme. There are three different themes that are available, mostly related to dark mode and light mode. And this is imported from this path. So if you don't want any of the styling, it's all coming from here, the CSS, SVG, and all of it. So you don't need to import this. Just
That's
go
pretty cool.
in GitHub, look at this, and create your own. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Just out of curiosity, like if I want to create my own bold button, obviously, like I would need to interact with the Lexical API. Like, how can I do it?
Yeah, so if that would be like very easy.
Okay.
You just in the, so where is the toolbar code? I think so. This is the editor. Yeah, here. So you just, if you put here instead of this bold button, your own Svelte component, which is a button, it will appear in the toolbar. Obviously, it will inherit something from the toolbar in terms of the placement and how it's shown. But you can get rid of the whole toolbar
Yeah.
also. But if you just want to add a new button or replace a particular button with your own styling, and you want to maybe show
No,
the
but what I
text
was
of the
asking is
icon.
obviously like to use the bold button. Like if I want to make my own bold button, I would need to, like when you click that button, I would need it to do something, right? So I think I can use this editor, active editor, and block type variables on top to interact with the underlying API.
Yeah, so you can, there is an underlying API,
Okay.
and yeah, you can use that. It's still based on
On Lexical.
store, yeah, Svelte store.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what it's based on. And I'm in the future, I plan to move it to runes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, but there is a store where you can get all the different store variables, and you can set the bold, and it's reactive, so you can use that to create your own bold button as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay, thank you very much for showing, and I will definitely use it the moment I will need a rich text editor because I think it's pretty nice and it's very feature rich and it's very cool. Thank you for presenting and thank you for staying up this late because I know that it's very late for you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
One thing I would like,
yes,
yeah,
please.
one thing I would like to add here before we close. So, as part of this maintaining this Svelte Lexical project, what I'm doing often is looking at the React code and then converting it to Svelte. So looking at the two side by side, and often, I have something, but then there are more features added by lexical team into a particular component, and I'm continuously comparing React and Svelte code. So I just want to say here that as I do that, I really like how Svelte code looks in comparison to other frameworks, how concise it is, the structure of it, all the logic and code is right at the top in the script block, and then you get the markup in the middle and styling at the end, and the readability right away. You look at it, and it's like it requires much less mental power to understand what's going on. Yeah. So, and I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I also want to thank you for creating Svelte for all of us. I think it's so much fun to work with. Yeah. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you
mean,
all.
I am a Svelte lover myself, so I contribute to it, but I also like love Svelte deeply, so I can totally understand what you what you are saying. Thank you very much for like presenting us. Thank you for creating Svelte Lexical. Thank everybody for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you had a good hour or so with us, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.